would just share 5 kind of important tips or things that I've learned over the years that I would really strongly encourage you to use in your own language learning, and I hope they'll be helpful to you. One of the most important things I want to say to anyone learning a language is bravo. First of all, bravo. If you are taking the time and you're putting in the energy and the investment to learn another language, it's not easy. And you should really give yourself credit, and you should stop and celebrate the little wins that you have and the big wins that you have along the way. Perfecting the language, or really feeling like you can express yourself, not just communicate, but like connect and express in your own personality. I mean, for me, I would say that's still something I'm working on in French, even though I can very well be understood talking about anything. But language learning is a years long, if not lifelong process. And you have to enjoy the process, not just, look for the end result. And I have found it very, frustrated, yes, but joyful, yes. So exciting, yes, when you start to become understood, and when you get to a point where people won't necessarily always speak back to you in English, all of that. Okay, tip number 1, in the beginning, don't get too bogged down with grammar. Please, grammarians, don't post any negative comments there. I'm not saying not to learn grammar. I love grammar. I'm a writer. It's just that I think we can all agree that in many cases, if not most cases, people are learning a new language so that they can communicate with other people. And part of that communication is about talking and listening and exchanging information and ideas. What I saw in myself early on, and what I see in a lot of people who are trying to learn a language, is that they are timid or shy or afraid of making mistakes because they don't know the grammar fully and perfectly. They just stay quiet and they don't talk. And then they feel like they don't really engage with the language, and then they just sit there, and then their friends speak to them in English, and then, they never get anywhere. I'm just saying, in the beginning, learn to speak, learn to describe yourself, learn to ask for basic, simple things in a restaurant or at a store, or to ask directions, how to describe certain very simple situations, just like in the right now, what's the weather like, things like that. Once you get a little bit under your belt and you get out there and you really just practice saying these simple phrases, you'll find that you have more confidence, and then you'll go a little deeper, and then you'll start to realize, okay, here's the next step of what I have to learn. And even if you're taking a course, that's fine too. I'm just saying you got to get out there and don't let the grammar hold you back from expressing yourself and trying to speak as soon as possible. And my second tip for new language learners, or even those who are in the middle but kind of stuck, would be just face it and accept the fact that you are going to sometimes feel embarrassed, or, I don't want to use the word humiliated, but I have been humiliated in my French language learning numerous times. And you know what? It's not a negative, really. It's how you look at it. The fact is, when you're learning, another friend said to me, you're like a baby. You're trying to learn to communicate in a completely new way. And especially if you're an adult, that's not always so easy to do. So give yourself some credit. Understand that there are going to be hard times. I can't tell you the number of times that even at a state of fluency in French, I have used the wrong word or said a phrase that I didn't fully understand, and come to find out it means something different than I thought it did. Sometimes you're going to feel embarrassed, and don't let that stop you. I once was studying with a teacher who was absolutely wonderful. She was a former opera singer, and she told me that in making mistakes is how we progress and how we learn. Just understand that even when you make a mistake, even if it's a serious mistake, it's going to be a great story later. I tell all my language mistake stories to our French friends now, and they just think it's hilarious. Tip number 3 would be to surround yourself, immerse yourself as much as possible in the language that you're trying to learn. So for myself, I daily watch news in French. I read in French. If I'm watching a movie, even if it's a movie in English, I'll put the French subtitles on if I want to just pick up on, new slang terms, or just have my mind registering the French. There's so many ways that you can immerse yourself and try to absorb the language, just listening to the rhythm of the language, if you're in the beginning stages. Whatever it may be. Online there are so many resources now, and in the description below, I'll put some of my favorite online channels for learning language, because I have a few favorites that have really helped me along the way. Okay, so tip number 4 is really just that you're gonna have great days in your language where you just feel like the words are just appearing out of nowhere. I mean, this happens to me all the time. I'll have a day where, everything is just flowing. It's like I'm in a complex conversation. I'm telling a story. I'm using all the different tenses. I've got conjugating things in sophisticated ways. I've got turns of phrase that make me look like I know what I'm doing. And then you're going to have bad days. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. You take a step forward and then the next day you're just not feeling so great. That doesn't mean that you have regressed. It's a natural part of the learning process for a new language. So don't beat yourself up about that. Okay, tip number 5 may seem like an obvious suggestion, but whatever language you're trying to learn, it is really wise to go to a country that speaks that language, at least for some extended amount of time. Like, a short vacation is not really enough. It's enough for, to help a little bit. Certainly it's great to do that for inspiration. But if you really, really are serious about learning a language, you should try to do a summer course somewhere. If you are in school, you could do an exchange program or a stage or something like that. It just sort of supercharges, your language learning. I mean, I was at a level of fluency when I moved to France last year, but just being here for the last 10 months, my French has just improved exponentially. It's just being there, living in the language and exposing yourself to the culture and everything. It just sinks in. So if you can, go to the place where they speak the language that you want to learn. Okay, this is a bonus tip. To try to make sure you have at least a small group of people in your life who can support you in your language learning. And I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I had a partner in my relationship, and he spoke French, but he would not speak French with me. Now, granted, I was at a much lower level of French then. I really couldn't speak very well, but I wanted to try a little bit here and there, and he just was not into it. At the same time, you can understand why maybe a spouse or a partner, even if they speak the language, if you're a real beginner, it may be very difficult for them to have to think of themselves as your language professor. I would just say find someone who speaks the language, whether it's in an online group or you get yourself, 1 hour per week with a teacher, or, you take a class and you make friends with others there. Try to find a supportive community that will help you and make you feel supported and, practice honestly. I won't say it makes perfect, but it sure does make better. I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it helpful.